Hi guys, this is Miss He, and today we're looking at properties of matter. Matter is anything that has mass and takes up space. Everything around us, solid, liquid, and gas, is made up of matter. Today we'll see how states of matter differ and how substances change between states of matter. So to start with, we're going to talk about states of matter. Let's start with something familiar. Imagine an ice cube, a bottle of water, and a pot with steam coming out of it. They may look different, but they are all water in three different states: solid, liquid, and gas. Water is an excellent starting point because we see it naturally on Earth in all three states. So scientists use particle theory to explain why solid, liquid, and gas behave differently. The particles do not change, only the arrangement and the movement changes. So in solids, particles are closely packed together. Because of that, the particles can only vibrate, and hence they are almost always in a fixed shape. And since they're in a fixed shape, their volume is also fixed. For liquid, the particles are closely packed, but not as close as solid. That allows the particle to roll over one another or pass one another. And thanks to that, a liquid is able to take up the shape of any container. If we put water into a funky shaped cup, it's going to take up the shapes of the cup. Whereas a solid will not take up shape of the cup. It will stay in its shape no matter where I place it. Gas particles are a lot more spread apart, and thanks to that, they can move in any directions quite rapidly. So they can also take up to the shapes of a container, and they don't have a fixed volume because they take up the entire shape of the container by finding any space available to move. So we can use particle theory to explain everyday observation. Solids hold their shape because their particles are locked in place. Liquids can float because their particles move more freely, and gas expands to take up any space because their particles moves quickly and spreads out really further away. So in school, we usually explain the particle theory and states of matter by observing changes in state. So the process of which we do so is by placing some ice cubes inside of a beaker, and we'll put it on top of a gauze mat and a tripod stand. At the bottom, we'll supply heat using Bunsen burner. And we'll put a thermometer in the beaker to measure the change in temperature over time. We usually measure temperature in degrees Celsius and measure the change in time in minutes. So starting from an ice cube, we'll go from a negative temperature. As we add heat in the Bunsen burner, you will see the temperature in the thermometer slowly increasing, and it will reach to a point, usually 0 degrees Celsius, in which the solid starts to melt. That means the solid cube will start turn into ice. And as we add heat again continuously, you will see the temperature again increasing and increasing in the thermometer until it reaches to another temperature in which now the liquid water are turning into gas. And you've guessed it, that process is called evaporation. And that evaporation process usually occurs at 100 degrees Celsius. Sorry, let me rewrite that because we've already got the units on the side of the temperature. We don't actually have to label them again on our axes. Same thing with time. So as the liquid evaporates, it's now existing in a gaseous state. So to kind of sum it up, the process of which solid turns into liquid is called melting. The process of which liquid turns into gas is called evaporating. And we're doing so by adding heat. Now, what do we do? What happens if we do the opposite? What if I put these gaseous molecule and a liquid in a cold environment like a fridge where I remove heat? Well, in that case, your gas turning into a liquid is called condensation. And the process of which your liquid turning into solid is called freezing. Now, these, so far, they are more of a common sense terminology. However, they are two processes that's less commonly known. The process of converting from a solid to a gas straight away is called sublimation. And the process of which a substance is turning from gas to solid straight away is called deposition. They can occur, not as commonly, but they can occur. So that's everything you will need to know for 3 states of matter and how they change. To sum up our lesson, let's put everything we've learned today into a quick table. But looking and describing, hopefully by the end of the session, you will be able to describe 3 states of matter by using the particle theory to kind of compare the key properties and interpret and identify changing state of matter using the heating curve and identify all 6 states of change. Now let's put all these concepts to a summary table. So the state that we looked at today includes solid, liquid, and gas. The 3 examples we're given today were ice, water, and steam. The particles' arrangements directly affects how they can move. So in the solids of ice, the particles are closely packed. So because of that, the particles can only vibrate. Whereas for liquid, the particles are close but not packed, so they're able to slide past one another. And in the gas, the particles are far apart, so the particles pretty much move freely. And that kind of explains the way they behave. So solids, they all have a fixed shape, whereas for liquid and gas, they don't have fixed shape, they takes up the shapes of their container. Sorry, not fixed. And for they're behaving that way, as a result, the volume of a solid is also fixed. The volume of a liquid is also fixed. But the volume of a gas is not fixed. And that table will wrap up our lesson today. Okay. Hope you all have a nice day. I will see you in the next video.